Sure.
So we're live. Let me send out, whoops, let me send out my little message to everybody.
Hello, everyone. So it's nice.
Always takes so long. I don't know how long it takes, and then I do it again, and it goes up twice. So all right, I'll just go up twice. There we go. All right.
So welcome to our Friday's Insights coffee break with Marianne and me. This is going to be an interesting talk today.
Yes, we have an interesting topic. How about if we first get everybody just lined up, centered? This is really important for this topic.
Yes, centered.
Which we'll get into in a moment. So lead the way, Lionel.
Yeah, so just all close your eyes whenever you're listening to this live or not. Take a moment to just drop in to your center, your core. Yeah. Pretty quick. Very nice. Just feeling that alignment, that core channel. Yeah.
And really feeling yourself connected to the earth. Let's really get anchored into that grounding and present moment. Yeah, there we go.
Yep.
Very nice. Okay, good job. Good job, everyone. So the topic today is magic. It came, decided to do this because a lot of people do not understand what magic is and what it's all about. And there's a lot of different forms of magic. There's kind of some basic categories, but wanted to talk about that because one thing that came up recently in a session for myself, and clearing myself, is going really deep. This took me back really far back. Hi, Harold. Welcome. Glad you're here. I think you'll find this talk interesting on magic here. And it got to the point where there was, God, I can't remember how it started, but it was totally convoluted, and it was really, it's like I was in this really strong grip of something that was keeping me from moving into myself and moving higher up in my vibration. And then it came up that it was black magic, and that way back. I mean, this goes far back. My senses, I may be off on this, and of course there's repeats over, but getting to the original point was way back in ancient history, human history. But I had to clear up magic and clear up that spell for myself and break out of that. So I won't go into details of that, but it's been really interesting for me because I've always not got in. I hate rituals. Bottom line, I don't like rituals, and you'll understand what I'm saying in a minute, but with my explanation. But I just like, okay, let's just do the works up, but there's been that flavor that's come up in different ways for me, and part of that for me is I'm here for the awakening, for supporting everybody, regardless of paradigm, regardless of culture, regardless of anything. I want to move beyond all so that I can support all. I mean all, everyone who wants to step up to the plate for themselves and work with me. And so I have to be above all of these things. But anyway, so I wanted to talk about magic, and I want to start at the highest level. So the highest level of truth of what magic is. Magic, in essence, is working with the building blocks of existence, of creating and taking apart. Does that make sense, Lionel, you think? Yeah.
It makes sense. I'm curious, and so I'm guessing also I can feel the group being curious about what that means, the building blocks of existence.
Yeah. So I see those as structures. For me, I name them structures because that's how I pick up on things, on distortions, on people, is structure. So literally, if you think of a scaffolding, of a building. That's the kind of the basic structure of the building. So you've got those rebars that, you know, form the shape, take the shape of the building, and then around goes the cement and all that, you know, kind of thing. So, but for something to come into existence, you know, we're going from something that's on one hand, it's coming out of a state of nothingness. And there's this process, and I've got an article on my blog about energy and frequency with the differences where I talk about that. So it starts out of nothingness and kind of works its way down into physical form. So that's going in one direction of building life, but then there's also the opposite process of coming, you know, starting at physical form, but then going into that reverse piece of going back into that nothingness or that oneness of existence kind of thing.
So when I hear you share these, the first thing that pops to me is the first process feels like materialization, you know, which is then what reminds me of that understanding of magic then from that perspective. And the second process of it going the reverse would be like a death process, falling apart into nothing.
Yeah, and there it is also magic. Magic, you know, ties into to both sides. So going to that at that highest level, it's just about the materialization, the creating of something, and then the dematerialization or the breaking down and the decay and the death of something.
Yeah.
So at that highest level, it's all well and good, and you know, it's in that perfect balance and in that state of balance and harmony with all of existence. So, but as we move down, when we move into lower levels and getting down into the human level, what's ended up happening is we have a breakdown of those two. Instead of really being kind of this flow between one and the other, it's a breakdown, and on one side there's white magic, and on the other side there's black magic. And a friend of mine, so I had a friend who helped me understand a lot of pieces that, and she is the only person that I've met and that I've known who could work with the elements and actually bring them through into physical. So when she was leading circle, the directions, you know, there's, for those who aren't familiar, it's like you have everybody stand in a circle, and then there's somebody, you honor each of the directions, and then there's elements for each of the directions. It's like, well, for example, with her, without having anything except just calling the directions to each person, the person standing in the direction where it was water was literally as if my friend Marlene had taken a bucket of water and thrown it at her. It wasn't just the person at the place of that direction. It was also, it's like she had gotten splashed, and then it had splashed into the people next to her. So their clothes were literally wet, even though there was no physical water. So she's the only person that I've ever met who has very strong abilities with working with the elements. So that's part of what comes in with magic, just to give you a sense of that translation from the frequency all the way down to the material, physical level.
Right.
So there's the white magic and the black magic. And what she said to me is there's everything, both practices are exactly the same. There's only one difference between white magic and black magic. And that difference is the intent, what you're doing it for.
Yeah.
If you are doing it for the purpose of your own power, your own strength, or somebody else's, because then people get hired for that, right? And there's a lot of great movies. There's a Keanu Reeves movie where he's a lawyer, and I think the devil is played by Al Pacino. That's a really good one, because that shows you some of the practices and how that's done. So that's a real dark movie, so just to be aware and just to really hold your space when you watch stuff like that. It's for personal and I don't want to say motivation, but it's not motivation, gain, but personal gain. And white magic is focused for, as she put it, the greater good of all. So it's not about what you're going to gain out of it, but it's about bringing that harmony to everyone, to all. So there's a lot of different practices, and like there's high magic, which is a very ritualized form of magic. There's working with the elements. There's also kind of minor forms that people do just because it's part of their tradition, their country's, their culture's traditions, and it goes back to really ancient times when people lived by the elements. And so there's a lot of people do rituals to the moon, and so that is kind of a mild form of magic too.
Yeah, so with rituals, the part that when you mentioned earlier that you don't like rituals, that piece also reminds me of how rituals, it comes often in with a structured religious paradigm. That's kind of how we ritualize things, and it kind of it eliminates the freedom of choice, the free expression. And so that's the sense I get with rituals, which is how they fit into some of the darker practices of magic that way, because you can kind of ritualize something until it becomes something that you're programmed out of, that free expression of your spirit.
Yes, exactly. And I'll get into that for a minute, but we have to remember that it's not just the dark side that does the ritual. It's also the light side. So it's both sides, but it's the intent and why you're doing that. And so what comes to mind for most people when they think of like the dark stuff and all this is what we see in the movies mostly. But I'll give you an example that I came across, and and if this person is listening in, the person will know who they are when I say the story, because we talked about it. But I'm not saying that this happened in this case. It's just a really good example of how we can get pulled into kind of a dark magic and a spell, basically, without the person who's doing it intending that, or the person on the receiving that realizing that what's going on. But on a very just surface level, so not with all this ritual stuff, for example, you go for a meditation program with a group or whatever, and the person leading the meditation happens because they either don't know what they're doing, or they do know what they're doing, or something is working through them, starts to cover each person and contain each person within a kind of like a little box, a little cave, and you get the person feeling really good, really high, really elevated, expanded, because that will happen for a lot of reasons, not because you're really expanded. And then you box the person and you contain them, and then you have them sit in that space. So that container is actually creating a death space and a space of decay for the person. And so that's actually, it's also keeping them from really connecting with themselves. So the reason that you might feel expanded, or somebody might feel expanded in that state, is because something greater is coming in at you.
Yeah, it creates that euphoria, right? But it's not connected to the
feeling good, but it's not about you connecting with yourself.
Right.
It's about something has a greater power than you do. And it's whether it's good or bad, we like to think that it's only good things, coming from the positive side that will affect us that way. No, it's like the dark side, because there's the allure, there's the seduction, basically. I mean, it's a seductive beast. That's how you pull people in. You make them feel good about themselves. Hey,
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah. Nazi, Hitler, and the Nazis use that. You make people feel good about themselves. You give them the right reason, and you can make them do anything. So that's an example of that.
So speaking about seduction, Kayla's asking a very good question that I was thinking about earlier. Is within the realm of sex, they also have that sex. I don't actually know what it is, but I've heard of that magic before.
Yes, yes. So hi, Marlou.
Yeah, thank you.
So that's a good question, and it basically comes down to it's just
the intent again, right?
It's a form of magic. So it's whatever, whether you use the elements or sex or whatever, and sex is, that can get really tricky, because then that gets really, you have to be even more careful.
It can be distorted.
Well, they can all be distorted, but that piece about sex is coming into that really primal level of expression, and understanding and connection to you, because sex always takes us to the deepest, most intimate part of ourselves.
Yeah.
So, and then sex is often used, or sexuality, sex. I mean, a lot of dark practices use that because it really pulls people in. It really lures people in.
And it cultivates the life force that can be used or taken, or
Yeah,
whatever version of
yeah,
that.
yeah. So again, it depends on the intent and what it's used for. So it's not the practice itself.
Yeah.
But
So
it's
here,
so sex gets into a very manipulative piece, or can be.
yeah. So here, I had a point about this too, and a question like, so seduction that goes to manipulation, and with the intent can be used for dark purposes that way. But then I'd consider the white magic version of the same energy, if we just consider them energy, then you could say that when you magnetize something to you to create abundance or attract in, that would be the same form of magic used in a positive sense, or in a white magic kind of sense. Would that make sense, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we start walking fine lines, because then, what I hear with the question coming up with that is like, well, isn't that manipulation? It comes back to your state of mind and what you're doing it for. So if it's for the for example, for the highest good, with pure source intentions and of pure source. Bottom line, guys, is this of pure source of intention and through pure source, with pure source.
Yeah.
But yes, and the thing is, people, like, if we take people have a tendency to think that white magic is better than black magic. It's not either or. So we have to stay away from that, because then I've seen people go just kind of like, kind of distort themselves, because it's like, it's got to be, the white, it's got to be the good, it's got a good intention. And so they distort themselves. And that's very much the religious paradigm of, you've got to be good,
good,
and
bad,
then
hell,
it consumes you completely and breaks you down because you don't own yourself.
Well, also because when you go to the higher levels, you need to find more balance, and there's less room. So then it's harder. So you can easier go off track if you want. You really have to stay in that fine line between the two, where you experience that balance. So when you judge either, you easily go off kilter, and then you're kind of off that intent. So it makes sense. That makes total sense.
Right. So that's a good point. It's coming back out of that lower realm area where it's all kind of mucky and all that, is really coming into that line between good and evil, light and dark. We really need to come into center and be in that place of connection to pure source, and coming through with pure source intentions and of pure source intentions. So it's not about us anymore. It's about the purity. And when we are focused on with pure source intention and of pure source, it's not about us. We might benefit from it, and we do benefit from it, of course, but it's about the benefit of the whole and the elevation of the whole. So that's the really important piece to remember. And yes, as the higher up you go, the more it's coming into that center line, and then getting to that place where it's not about anything, but it's about creating, materializing and dematerializing, and the play of existence. So coming back to that level and to that perception, and out of that space of ego, and even spiritual ego, like, because I've seen a lot of that too, but on the light, it's like, well, I'm doing good. I'm doing it for the good of humanity, and I'm doing it for the good because I'm doing it against this kind of thing. So yeah. Any questions?
And great questions here. I mean, like a good question. Yeah. Any other questions?
So kind of a delicate topic, but I think it's important to have a sense of that, because I've had to clear people up of dark magic stuff, and I really don't like doing it, but it gets very convoluted. It can be very, you pick up one piece and another. Yeah, and the allure. So I've been watching the Narnia movies these past 3 days. So it shows that really well with that. If you look at those, with the relationship between Edmund and the White Witch, but each movie shows a different aspect of that, and how that piece can keep coming back, And at first we think we've got it. He nails it, but on the last movie, it comes in and almost catches him again. And it's that allure and that pull, because it ties into the weakness. So, Lionel, what we were talking about this earlier, about the best magic that anybody can do for themselves.
Yeah, and what's the question?
No, it's not the question. It's about what it is, because we were talking about that earlier. And stepping out of that place where we get hit because of our weakness, and stuff. So,
right.
So yeah. What's the one piece that people can do for themselves, that pure magic for self that they can do?
Well, it really comes down to holding your own space and center, doesn't it? So that's the key. Staying, and that comes back to that balance point between the two as well. I think that's the key here. But holding that space, because and I've seen it too, where people can get lost, and especially we're about this path of awakening where you go to these higher and higher levels of consciousness, and it becomes more important to really know who you are and hold your own space. And for me, that's a really important practice that I'm still just today, like noticing how my boundaries need to be. And you were mentioning that to me before the call, Marianne, but it's like my boundaries could be more expanded to be able to hold my own space, but in all situations and circumstances, not just in certain ones. And so that's an important practice, because otherwise stuff comes in that you don't want to come in, and especially if you're sensitive and empathic, and you tend to feel a lot and take a lot in. And I've had that with movies too, like you were mentioning, Marianne, some of these movies where you really have to, where I could feel the frequencies of the movie, and it's starting to get to me. And so that's a really important practice. I don't know if there's any other ones that you have, Marianne, but that's certainly one.
No, I think that's the foundation piece, and everybody needs to work on that. And as you move higher, still keep working on that, because you move into higher levels. It's fine tuning that, but owning your body, owning your space, and your space arm's length out around you guys. That is your nothing except you should be in that space. And if there's something. And you might feel that pressure, and that's okay, if something coming in and just like, no, absolutely not, pushing back kind of thing. So that's the pure magic. That's the best magic you can do for yourself. And always starting at that point, no matter what else you do. If you want to do a little song and dance for the full moon, that's great. That's fun, and that's a fun thing to do with friends. Always have everybody in the group come down into owning themselves, centered on themselves, like that middle line is Lionel, that 0 point, as Lionel was pointing out, and your space. And Kayla said movies are such a great strengthener for boundaries and observing instead of absorbing. Yeah, very good. So if you feel like you want to learn more about it, there's a lot of really good and kind of dark movies, as well as there's movies like Narnia, which are kind of more a little bit more benign, but really make the point. That really made the point of how we can get lured and seduced by our weaknesses and whatever with that.
I like that, observing instead of absorbing. Yeah, that's very nice. And
so go into always kind of like go with the intents, like, okay, let's start by holding your space, and holding your space as you watch, and with everything that you do. So, all right, well, that was a kind of a heavy duty coffee break today, but I think it was important to cover and talk about. So thanks for stopping by, and and I guess
because this is I just want to say it's an interesting topic, and it brings a lot of curiosity and interest to the space. So I'm sure you guys got a lot out of this as well. So yeah, wanted to add that piece in. I think there was a little bit of a moment of disconnect there, but yeah, we're back.
Thanks for joining us, guys, and we'll see you next week. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Bye-bye.